Time to start with our third issue. We're going to talk about health and human services. We have Senator Omar Aquino, Mr. Jose Sanchez from the Norwegian hospital. It's a very sensitive issue. We have so many things to talk. We are discussing today at a federal level the tax overhaul that could finish the individual mandate, which would be very hurtful for our folks here in the state of Illinois. So I know Omar and Mr. Sanchez have very important things to say, not only about that, but about other initiatives that I know Omar is pursuing. So let's start with Omar, and let's pay attention.
What time is it? Oh, it's almost good afternoon, but still good morning, everyone. Good morning. We lost a little, I think. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. There you go. We're up and ready. All right. So my name is State Senator Omar Aquino. I represent the 2nd District, which is on the northwest side of the city of Chicago. I took over for State Senator Willie Delgado when he retired last year, and so have been in office for a little bit over a year and a half. And won't go into great detail on my bio, but I'm on 7 committees in the state senate, most committees than any other senator at the time on both the appropriations and human services, amongst others. I'm going to let our expert, though, talk about the topics, go into greater detail on the overhaul of Medicaid insurance and changes to Obamacare and its impact in Illinois. But I specifically want to go over a few pieces of legislation that we were able to pass this year in the General Assembly and that were signed into law that I believe have a great impact not only on all communities in Illinois, but specifically the Latino community especially. One of our most I think popular or landmark bill that was passed this year that had to do with healthcare was HB 40. It secured that any and every woman in this state still has a choice to make determinations on her body. I think that is something that we need. That is a huge piece of legislation when we're talking about what has happened on the changes politically in in Washington, of both who is representing us in the White House and also the majority rather in Congress from a conservative Republican Party, possibly getting rid of Roe versus Wade and things like that. And so we wanted in Illinois to make sure that we had a piece of legislation that would say here in Illinois, if the government doesn't make decisions on my body as a man, we're not going to be making decisions in Illinois for women and theirs. Another piece of legislation that I think is of interest is HB 3131. I actually was the chief sponsor of this bill in the Senate, along with my colleague in the House and Latino Caucus member Teresa Ma, who brought this up in the House. It requires the Department of Human Services to collect and publicly report statistical data on racial and ethnic demographics of program participants, administered by the department. The importance of that is that if we are spending public dollars on any program in this state, we need to find out if those things are adequately being utilized, if it's equitably being utilized, especially on racial and ethnic terms, so that as a caucus especially, we can make sure that we are advocating for programs that are in our communities and are given to people, participants that we represent. Another, I'm not going to go through the list that I have. We'll go through some more, but I also want to talk a little bit about the Nurse Practice Act that my colleague here, Senator Martinez, had been at the head of. It basically gives nurse practitioners greater authority in the state of Illinois, and the importance of that is that when we live still in a society that unfortunately there are underserved communities, especially the Latino communities, that we are giving greater authority to nurse practitioners to be able to meet that need where it's at. So I want to commend my colleague, Senator Martinez, for her great work in that. But in order to move on and to make sure that we are moving with the program, I want to allow for Mr. Sanchez to go into greater detail on the topics that we're going to cover here on Health and Human Services, as he is our expert panelist here.
Thank you, Senator, and I think it's afternoon already. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I would like to kind of make some remarks about healthcare to really understand the Latino health profiles in our communities that we served. But I also wanted to really focus on some of the issues that are at the federal level, the state level, some of the impact of the overhaul of the Medicaid program in the state of Illinois. So let me begin by mentioning that in 2014, the National Institute for Health actually published a large article study of Latinos in the United States, which included over 16,400 individuals that they surveyed in 4 different states around the country, and over 4,000 right here in our state of Illinois. The study actually identified a large number of health issues that pertain to Latinos, including several that are very troublesome for us as a community. That includes that nearly half, or 50%, of those who participated in the study actually, regarding the high-risk conditions, they found that those aged 45 to 64 were at risk for diabetes in our population. About 1/3 of individuals with diabetes were totally unaware that they were diabetic. About 40% of the participant ages 18 to 44 were obese in our community. And obesity certainly have other comorbidity like high blood pressure, vision issue, some type of cancer, cardiovascular disease, as well as diabetes as a result of obesity. Prior to the Medicaid expansion program, or the Affordable Care Act, about 50% of Latinos throughout the whole country actually didn't have any health insurance, and the state of Illinois actually was behind the state of Florida, especially in the Miami area. 80% of men and 71% of women had at least one adverse risk. And of some of the conditions that you find, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, obesity throughout the entire city of Chicago. They are also significant issues with access, having availability to primary care, and also options to where to go to get health care. In some cases, our community actually is a desert healthcare community, and what we find is that they are what we call Medicaid meals that are set up by individuals, group of physicians, but they do not have any regulations, so the care that they provide is not even measured whether it's meeting certain target clinical conditions. So we need to take some actions based on that, but the reason that I'm mentioning only diabetes in my discussion is because it is probably the most prevalent chronic condition in our community right now, although there are other conditions that actually exist in our community. So I will move on, and I give you just a little bit of overview about the...
I know you have a long list, Jose, and I want to interrupt. We are very, very delayed in the program, and I know you're going to have to answer a lot of questions from our audience.
We'll have another session later
So
on
we'll
after
give
we
you another
finish.
chance. We're going to invite people to your office and they can ask you questions about it. How do you feel about that? Okay, let's move on. Let's open, before we open the panel for discussion and questions, let's move with a topic. Let's talk about the economy and employment. And we have Senator Martín Sandoval and Mr. Todd Maish. Did I pronounce it right? He's from the Chamber of Commerce, and the topic is very, very touchy nowadays because, I mean, the economy, it's recovering clearly, but it hasn't solved the biggest of the issues, which is employment, Martin, and I'm sure you have a lot of things to say about that.
Well, I was just hoping that I'd get my blood pressure taken later on. It's been a wild week in Illinois, in the Latino community. Buenas tardes. Es un orgullo estar aquí con todos ustedes aquí en esta conferencia, este town hall del Latino Caucus. It's great that you're all here representing business community, labor, our social service agencies, government. This is an historic moment for the Illinois Latino Caucus Foundation. This is the first of a kind town hall. And I want to give credit to Fred Crespo, who led the effort to come up with this idea and put it together. So let's give a round of applause for Fred Crespo. And this couldn't have been done without support of the board members, the Latino, my fellow colleagues. But if you've heard already this morning, the Latino Caucus Foundation, led by, and I'm going to boast again, my appointment, when I first became a senator, and when I was a founding member of the Latino Caucus with El Moisés del Latino Caucus, Miguel del Valle, I said we need to have Mike Gonzalez. And so I'm very proud of the fact that my appointee, Mike Gonzalez, has been very instrumental in leading the Latino Caucus Foundation to where we're at today in its quinceañera año of existence. I'm Martín Sandoval. I'm the state senator for the southwest side of Chicago. I've been in government for now over 30 years, half of that in the federal sector and more than half of it now in an elected office. I've held countywide office as a water reclamation commissioner, and I've been the state senator now for 16 years. It's an historic moment in our lives in Illinois. Change is taking place again. It's cyclical. We see with the announcement of many of our Latino elected officials in the Latino community how the political demographics are shifting, the plate tectonics are shifting, and where we'll end up, we don't know, but it will set the template probably for the next decade. So stay tuned. Stay tuned over this next coming year, the next few months. And we see what's happening in Washington with our president and what's happening at the State House with our governor. And in light of all of that, we see the market in its great splendor. The market is reacting very positively like no other time in recent history. There is low unemployment. And I think Todd has the numbers, lowest we've seen in a long time. We see some of the highest wages, even in Illinois, as the political landscape and the leadership have moved to raise the minimum wage, right? And so there are some positive things that are going on in the state, in the Latino community. If I look at the restaurants on the weekends in the Latino community, if I look at the number of quinceañera stores that are abundant, as I look at the business districts that are, if you go down La Villita, if you go down Kedzie Avenue, if you go down Milwaukee, if you go down a number of our commercial districts in Chicago, in Aurora, in Elgin, Waukegan, et cetera, you will see that things are happening in the business community. Some of us may have a different opinion. It is my observation. But what I've been trying to do as chairman of transportation and vice chairman of energy from my perch, and I've got to give credit to Miguel del Valle. 16 years ago, when with the election of Martín Sandoval and La Reina del Norte, Iris Martinez, Senator Martinez, remember that? We're the veterans now, huh? Iris? See? La Reina del Norte y el Rey del Sur. We make a great combination. It's a good novela, Univision, wherever you're at. It's a good novela. Miguel del Valle said, Martín, we need someone to sit on some of the business-centric committees in the Illinois Senate. The Energy and Environment Committee of the Illinois Senate had never, ever seen a Latino serve on that committee. And Miguel del Valle says, Martín, I think you're the one. You're the one based on your federal experience, your procurement experience. And I thought, well, who the hell wants to go to that committee, right? And here I am still serving on that committee. So thank you, Miguel, for that word of encouragement. Energy, transportation, utilities. So what I've been trying to do is trying to respond to the reason why many Latinos have come to this country, to work, and to work. Because work allows Latino families to send their kids to school, buy a house, pay for college, and retire, right? That's the American dream. La chamba. Hay que ir a Estados Unidos, hay que ir para el norte a trabajar. And so I've been focusing on that over the last few years. And I've been looking at the Illinois economy and the job growth areas in the Illinois economy. We've been looking at the energy industry, which is booming, and we as legislators are adding to that boom by providing added incentives to the energy industry, right? Both to the electric and to the gas industry to upgrade our infrastructure system, right? And billions and billions of dollars have already been spent and are going to be spent in the electrical and gas industries. And I have always said, we need to be present. We need to be present. We need to be the attorneys, be the accountants, be the PR agencies. We need to dig the ditches. We need to change the pipes. We need to change the poles. We need to be present. And so with the support of many of my colleagues, we've passed legislation to require the utility industry to give greater reporting and transparency of their investments in the Latino community. And so we've today seen a record investment and award of work to Latino companies in the energy and utility industry. And I'll finish, Mariano. We've also, because of those successes, we have passed similar legislation at another growth industry, which is healthcare, hospitals. Hospitals will be reporting from now on their investments in MBE diversity spend. We've also passed legislation on the railroad industry. We've also passed legislation on the private and public university. We have now, with support of the Latino Caucus, we have passed legislation to require greater diversity, greater reporting, greater transparency on all our growth industries. And let me tell you, things are happening now in the right direction. And we need to continue and seek your support to push the legislature, continue to focus on la chamba, which is why we all continue to come to this great country.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I like to say that.
Just want to jump right up. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here, especially for the very first one, and be invited, so thank you, Marty. for the invitation. So I'm Todd Meisch with the Illinois Chamber, and the Chamber of Commerce is kind of unique in the business community in that we represent the diversity of business community, whether it be geography, whether it be the type of business that you own, large, small. So consequently, we do have, I think, a pretty unique and good perspective on what's happening in Illinois, what's happening in the job market. But also, Chambers of Commerce, we know how to catch up on the agenda. So I am going to race through a little bit to make sure we've got as much time for your questions as possible. So I do want to make a few points, though, in particular, and I'm also going to probably, is this your 10th shout out, Becca? I'm very proud to be co-chair of the Illinois Business Immigration Coalition. We will be hosting an event Monday morning with Senator Durbin, and now, can I break the news? Never mind, all right. A special guest.
Yes.
So very, very important, kind of really rounds out our program. But also I'm chair of the Transportation for Illinois Coalition, along with my friends in labor. We do get along on some very important issues, and Marty, again, is a great leader, and we appreciate all the legislators' support on behalf of transportation, and I'll come back to that quickly. So Illinois is obviously a very big and diverse state. So when you talk about economic development in a greenfield site in Lake County is different than economic development on the west side of Chicago. The growing small businesses in an urban environment as opposed to trying to attract an Amazon headquarters or a Foxconn, they're different things. So I just wanted to point out there are 3 areas that all businesses have got to have that's common across the state. Doesn't matter what your business is, where it is. First of all is the access to a quality workforce. There's a lot of discussion, great discussion on education this morning. That is so important. You hear all about STEM, the need for STEM training. Those are where the really good paying jobs are developing, so that has to continue to be a real point of emphasis. I think a lot of people are doing very, very good things on closing the skills gap across the state. A lot of communities, whether it be Elgin, maybe this community as well. But I tell you what, it's not part of a statewide strategy, because one doesn't really exist, and those different folks don't talk to each other enough. So you have a best practices exchange. So we need to go ahead and do better with that. Good people doing good things, we need to get them connected. We need to go ahead and get it expanded. The second thing you need, every business needs, is access to good transportation. If you have the ability to make the world's best machine, but you can't get that product to where it needs to go, and your workers can't get to your workplace, it's of no value at all. So you've got to have transportation. So yes, that is a pitch for a new capital bill to get money into transit that we need, to get money into roads and bridges, so it's very important. The last thing you need, though, is just the overall business climate. So we might have a little different opinion on some of the particulars, on minimum wage and such, but you do have to keep in mind that the overall business climate is very, very important. You don't have to write nearly as big a check in tax incentives to lure a company here if the overall business climate costs are held down. So these are the 3 common areas I want to point out. There are a lot of specific things I could get to, but I'll leave those for your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Meisch. Last but not least, our 5th issue is energy and telecommunications. We have Senator Cristina Castro and Commissioner Miguel del Valle. They have a lot of things to say about that, and I'm not going to take more time from them. Go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. My name is Cristina Castro. This is my first term in the General Assembly. I represent the 22nd Senate District, which covers Elgin, Carpentersville, Hanover Park, Hoffman Estates, Streamwood, and a portion of Schaumburg. So it has been a fabulous experience. I serve on 6 committees, one being the Energy and Information Technology Committee. As you know, technology has advanced and continues to advance at a rapid pace. So when you look at technology, we also have to keep our infrastructure up to date. And when you talk about transportation, technology is another thing. So in 2016, prior to my arrival to the General Assembly passed the Future Energy Jobs Act, which creates 4,200 new jobs, but in the areas of solar, energy efficiency, renewable power. There was also $30 million in investment in job training. A lot of this we hope to help the minority communities in our state. And one thing that we as a legislator put together, there is a lot of negotiating that takes in place when you have large pieces of legislation such as this. We also this year passed the telecommunications, renewal of the Telecommunication Act, and that was also a large piece of legislation. Is when you look at the federal act, in the federal act, you never would have accounted when it was passed, I believe in 1996 and signed under Clinton, the growth of the internet. Who had a cellular phone back in '96? Not very many people. They were probably bricks. So as you've seen technology advance, the acts need to go with technology, and you have to look at ways to improve it, but also to regulate it in some instances. For example, this bill in particular affects mostly AT&T. It's moving folks from you've heard a lot of misnomers about that it removes landlines. What it does is it starts migrating people to what we all use, which is a wireless number. 10%, I believe it's 10%, still use wireless. And during these conversations, when you talk about bills this size, a lot of people fail to realize that folks in the legislature, senators, reps, do wield a lot of influence when it comes to negotiation. One of the things I could take pride in, and I was very critical about the renewal, and I asked a lot of questions. This was a bill, the telecom rewrite was a bill that impacted a lot of our community. Majority of my community, especially Elgin in particular, you have about 60% Latinos. Many of them still rely on landlines. And then you also have seniors that rely on landlines. They use medical devices that rely on them. So these are a lot of questions that needed to be asked. And I appreciate AT&T. They heard my comments. And one of the biggest issues for me was also our low income. How will they have access to this technology? So AT&T came into my office, and we had a very passionate discussion. But in the end, we worked out a compromise. There is a fund that allows, and it was put into the bill, that will allow our low-income folks to tap into it, so if they need to buy a modem and different things, they're allowed to apply for it. And that's one of the things that, as legislators, we have that power. And you'll see a lot of the things that were put into the bill. Senator Sandoval talked about the energy reporting that is in the future jobs bill. And that was a lot of negotiation, and I'm sure a lot of conversations. So one thing I want everyone here to know is, just because something's put together and you see the huge tax bill and you see everything else, we do wield, as Latinos, a lot of power. We do wield a lot of influence on how we shape legislation. We need to continue to put pressure on that because we have a lot of buying power. And you can see that. And you need to hold us accountable, and we also need to hear from you. As legislators, I always tell my district, you need to let me know where you stand on certain issues. And I do have a lot of people who visit, but we do have that power. And so we pass the legislation. I'm going to turn it over to Miguel Del Valle, because then once it passes us, it goes to Illinois Commerce Commission, and he will talk about how we kind of work together, and we plan on working together further on how to improve these laws that we passed.
Thank you, Senator, and I want to start out by thanking you for your work on the telecom bill, and thanking Senator Sandoval for his work over the years on energy and telecom issues. But we talked about, Senator Sandoval and the Chamber talked about employment, and that's what it's all about. Really, we use fancy terms like economic development, but the bottom line is employment. And it's not just about having a job, it's about what type of job will we have? Will there be access to all levels of employment? Will there be access to jobs that require skills, specialization, and will Latinos be able to not only meet those requirements, but be able to then, once they enter a field, be able to advance and not be subject to restrictions and discriminatory practices that will make it difficult for people to move up the ladder, if you will. Because if they move up the ladder, individuals progress That progress is, of course, felt by the entire family, which in turn is felt by a neighborhood, by an entire community, by a city, by a state, by the country. As Latinos, we talk a lot about education, we talk about immigration, we talk about health issues. These are all very, very important issues. But when we talk about economic development overall, there are some sectors that we just don't pay enough attention to. And it's not by design. We're just so busy fighting every battle that has to be fought on immigration, on the education front. You know, sometimes you wonder, well, where would the energy come from to be able to look at these sectors, the tech sector, the energy sector, and other growth sectors where jobs are being produced. So if you look at, for example, what's happening with the, I call it a transformation occurring in Chicago, in Chicago's economy, discussions about, for example, bringing Amazon to Chicago. Well, I say to our friends at the chamber, while you certainly rally behind the state's efforts and the governor and the mayor's efforts to bring Amazon to Chicago, Latinos need to stop and ask, who will those jobs go to? Where will those jobs be? Will those jobs be downtown, primarily, if it's placed downtown? And will all those six-figure plus salary people who get those jobs be buying properties downtown, further contributing to the residential development, the rapid residential development that's occurring in the surrounding areas of the central business district, which some people refer to as gentrification, which is, in some respects, positive for the overall economy of the city, of course. In many respects, I would say positive for the overall economy of the city, but that has what some would categorize as an adverse impact on segments of the population. And that impact, adverse impact, is there because there are no viable alternatives or roads for people to take to be able to elevate themselves and be able to compete within that growing economy and that transforming economy. And so I look at the energy sector, for example, utility infrastructure spending across the country has soared to $122 billion. The most capital-intensive sector of the U.S. economy, electricity, will set new records on infrastructure investments this year for the 7th straight year in a row. And to do this, you have utilities companies in Illinois going where? Going to the General Assembly, going to our friends here for support to pass legislation that allows them to do the modernization, that allows them to spend all this money either to build the electric infrastructure, our grid, or to deal with our gas supply, or to deal with our telecommunications system. You know, one bill that is on hold right now that I know Senator Castro had a problem with, and she's going to be dealing with this, is the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act. This is in the telecom area. You know, we're moving to a 5G, not 4G, 5G system. So they're going to be putting these cells, smaller cells, on telephones and telephone poles and street light poles and all over the country. And this is creating a lot of jobs, a lot of activity. Accenture, the Smart Cities white paper, said that this could lead to thousands of direct and indirect jobs in Chicago alone. They passed the Energy Infrastructure Modernization Act. But as we talk about training and our people's access to these jobs, granted, Commonwealth Edison over the years has hired Latinos, People's Gas has hired Latinos, but given all the spending that has occurred and the number of jobs that have been created, not just direct jobs by the utilities, but by the contractors that they bring in. There are contractors, hundreds, thousands of contractors that do work. You know, Commonwealth Edison was saying to me just yesterday, as a matter of fact, that they're looking to provide more support to Puerto Rico, and that they have this mutual agreement, at least nationally here, where they, if a state has a hurricane and they need assistance, they send people over there. Well, the people that they send and that they would send to Puerto Rico are contractors that are routed through them. And so the question is, Senator, who are these contractors hiring? How many opportunities are Latinos getting with these contractors? There are other categories, and I want to mention just a few, and I know we're short on time, but I've got to throw out some numbers here. You know, the recent Latino Neighborhoods Report prepared by or for the Metropolitan Family Services, which gives an idea of where jobs are in some neighborhoods, gave us some numbers. And I highlight that report because we've got to do more of that. And I'm going to finish my comments by emphasizing that. But let me share with you some. These are people who are working in Little Village in the transportation, warehousing, and utilities category. Put together, those three, transportation, Senator Sandoval, warehousing, and utilities, of the people in Little Village working, only 4.7% are working in that sector, in those sectors, I should say. In the Belmont-Cragen area, 5%. In Pilsen, 4.6%. In Humboldt Park, 7.7%. And my guess is that that percentage is higher because there's a larger African-American population in Humboldt Park that's working in these sectors. In other words, we are still very much underrepresented in many of these sectors. And we are also not being prepared for the higher level jobs. You know, I think of, for example, the graduate program at Illinois State University, a public university that has a graduate program with a sequence in utility regulation to prepare people to enter high-level positions in the utility sector. No Latinos.
All right, Miguel.
And so that is an issue
very important
that needs to be addressed. And I've got one more point. I'm sorry.
I think you're on the right path, so I'll let you
got to give me one more point.
Yeah, totally.
And I want to finish with this, because I want to be respectful of the time people need to ask questions. The Latino Caucus Foundation needs to do what it set out to do years ago, and even attempted to do years ago. And that is set up the mechanisms to be able to tie legislation that members vote on, that they support, with a process, with a process that does ongoing evaluation, data collection, record keeping, to see whether or not all the commitments that the utilities have made when they went to them to ask them for their vote have been kept.
There you go.
That needs to be done through research and analysis. It has to be done by forming partnerships with graduate schools at our public universities that produce students that can work on these projects, do these reports, crank out these reports on an annual basis or on a semi-annual basis, use the reports to conduct hearings, public hearings, and be able to hold accountable a sector, the utility sector, the energy sector. For example, they voted to bail out, and I use the word bailout, Exelon. $230 million a year for 10 years for their nuclear plants, to bail out 2 nuclear plants. Do you know that at Exelon nuclear facilities, 85% of the workers are white and almost all of them are male? Do you know that there are very few Latinos that work in that sector? Yet we have Latino engineers like Mike Gonzalez and others who are available to do work. And so we've got to ensure that accountability. And if you don't have the structure, we talk about utility infrastructure, if we don't have our internal infrastructure in place as a foundation, we cannot hold these groups accountable. All we do is go from year to year talking about the same thing and asking you to call your legislator and to do this, blah, blah. No, that's great. But we've got to make sure that we have the facts and that we throw the facts in the face of those who are constantly coming to us, our communities, our legislators, for support. Thank you.
Certainly. Yeah, so we gave you an extra 5 minutes, and you noticed that I interrupted Mr. Sanchez before.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we're going to give him an extra 5 minutes too. That was really prepared because we're going to give him the last word. He's a great donor, so.
Well, thank you very much. Somebody felt sorry for me, so I'm delighted to see that. But let me say that listening to the conversation here about, you know, job creations and job opportunities, I think I want to say that there are two ingredients to have a healthy society. One is we need an education, and people need to be healthy to be able to work. So I think I wanted to make that clear, that people that are not healthy are not going to be productive. So we really need to focus on healthcare. So let me kind of talk a little bit about a couple of things that are going on in healthcare. One is there is no industry in the United States that have experienced more disruption in the last 10 years or 15 years than healthcare. In 2011, we have a piece of legislation that actually created the Affordable Care Act to expand coverage. 31 states around the country actually were able to accept that. We have been able to provide coverage for over 20 million people after that. We also created a provision that was very disturbing to every citizen in this country. Insurance companies were actually denied coverage for those people who have pre-existing conditions, and I think that that's a very good piece of legislation. We also had a marketplace that actually individuals who couldn't afford to purchase insurance were able to get subsidies from the federal government. And those things actually created a pool of significant individuals that got coverage in the last several years. So why are we talking about today about repealing and replacing the ACA? I think that there are some very specific. One, it is costly. And in order to provide coverage, it was not additional dollars that the federal government actually provided, but it was more on the end of revamping Medicaid, Medicare, and significant reductions in those programs, as well as creating a reduction in graduate medical education. And so we saw that. So 100% of the coverage for the expansion will be covered by the federal government until 2019. And later on, that becomes the responsibility of some of the states. So by 2019, you're going to begin to see reduction in the federal subsidies to the states around the country, which is the reason why other 19 states around the country did not accept the Affordable Care Act. So I think that we need to put that into context. However, as we kind of changed the landscape for providing care, I believe that now that we accepted the fact that the Affordable Care Act was a good legislation with some problematic issues, but the industry adopted to accept it and kind of reformat the way we do business, that now we are talking about repealing. If we repeal the Affordable Care Act, what are some of the implications for a state like Illinois? One of the implications will be financial implications. For the next 10 years, this state will lose about $40 billion for 10 years. There will be significant impact on those individuals who we actually got coverage. About 650,000 people got coverage in this state through the expansion. Most likely they will lose coverage. There will be more uninsured people. They will end up in the emergency room, which was one of the things that we avoided, because in the past, what we wanted to do is to really connect patients to a primary care physicians. Once you lose coverage, then you will end up going to the emergency room to the old days that your primary care doctor become your emergency department. So when you're in a crisis, you end up in a hospital setting, and that actually really costs a lot more dollars than we think. So I think that when you look at the federal impact and the implication of the state, I think that the individuals that are more affected by this are minorities, especially the Latino community. And I think we're going to see an increase in uncompensated care for hospitals that we cannot really afford. About 40% of all safety net hospitals in this state actually lose money or make very thin margins. So I think that we appeal to our legislators to basically continue to support healthcare, the expansion, safety net hospitals in our community. So I'm going to stop here.
Thank you very much, Jose.
Some questions.
That's very clear. Talk about our racist policy eliminating the ACA. The impact is going to be very imbalanced and on top of the colored communities. So let's open the forum to questions. Don't forget to introduce yourselves. We have mics on both sides, both aisles. Don't forget to introduce yourself and tell us who are going to direct your question. This time we're going to limit the questions or commentary to 20 seconds, okay? Are we clear?
Say hi.
Yeah? All right, let's start.
Hi, my name is Leslie Ann Dimas. I was formerly the Latino Outreach Coordinator for the 5th Congressional District, and in my former life, I was also a banker for Bank of America and JP Morgan, helping small businesses. So that is my question, is I've seen, how do we fill the gaps? Because right now, the big focus with small business is technology, technology, technology. But yet, there are a lot of immigrant businesses, whether it's in Albany Park, Rogers Park, Portage Park, Jefferson Park. I'm on Northsider, so, and I know Gage Park on the south side. So there's a lot of immigrant businesses that are not up to par with technology because they are mom and pop. And some of them don't even accept credit cards because they can't even afford merchant services. So how do we fill that gap and start inviting them or building chambers of commerces that within those communities, especially immigrant communities, to help support those businesses?
Thank you.
I think that it's a, running a small business is incredibly difficult, and we all know that the success rate is not where we want it to be. So there are always going to be some businesses that are kind of struggling to get where they want to be. I think that is a little bit of an old stat, but I think an average small business owner, once they pay everybody else, there's usually about $35,000 left over, and that's for the business owner. So it is a bit of a struggle. I will tell you that there are some programs that are being run that we could, and maybe you've in your previous life were aware of it, but Google and Amazon and others do have special small business outreach, and it could be getting connected to them. Also, just policy-wise, the Chamber advocated for a program that would let small businesses immediately expense capital investment to a certain extent. So you wouldn't have to, you get the tax benefit all in 1 year. And actually that's in the federal tax reform bill that's, I don't know, it's hour by hour. I don't know if it's passed yet or not. So that is an idea that's out there policy-wise, because we think that small businesses do need initial help, and there's not enough in that tax code, because a lot of people will say, hey, you've got all these business incentives. No, those are just for corporations. Most small businesses are not corporations, so there's not much in that individual tax code that helps them out. We need to proactively put something in there, even help them hire people to get them trained. So we've got a small business incentive agenda that we will introduce, and hopefully we'll get some traction on it.
Thank you, Mr. Maish. To my right?
Sure. Marta Cerda, ASI Home Care. I'm also a member of the Illinois Association of Community Care Providers, and also the Illinois Hospital Association Healthcare Transformation Leadership Academy. Senator Sandoval, you mentioned the minimum wage increase. We celebrate that as employers. We have 300 employees, great thing. What are you proactively doing as a caucus to create a regional unit rate increase for our Medicaid program so that we do not close? We had 20 agencies close under the budget crisis and countless more because the cities, we have to pay $12 and we're getting paid so little. What are you proactively doing for the regional unit rate increase for the community care program? Thanks.
Yeah, so the caucus hasn't necessarily taken a universal position under my chairmanship in regards to us helping to raise the wages for healthcare workers. There has been a number of efforts over the last few years by a number of my colleagues that have been here this morning and that are here today that have worked to raise the minimum wage or the wages of healthcare workers. We have worked hand in hand with AFSCME and SEIU to work on raising wages for healthcare workers, and we've been very aggressive in partnership with them to do that.
Okay, we were just talking about a regional increase for Cook County, because in Cook County we're paying like 11, 12, and downstate they're paying $8.25. So that, I'll just let you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think you
But we're
should-
just asking you to take a more proactive
Yeah,
approach.
and I would encourage you to talk to your Cook County commissioners.
We will, well,
Yeah.
okay.
There you go. Thank you
All
very
right.
much. To my left.
Hello, I'm Lourdes Rodriguez, Burgos Coordinator with the Department of Children and Family Services. And this is a question primarily for Mr. Sandoval and Mr. Aquino. We always have had problems attracting and retaining bilingual workers. One of the things that has passed many years ago is legislation to do some college loan debt forgiveness. The legislation passed. It's really being only applied to teachers at this point, but there is a provision for social workers that is not funded. And so I would like to see that funding, some dollars placed so that workers that come to DCFS who have student loans, who are frontline workers, most of their hiring is with child protection, and so to do some debt forgiveness for them working for the State of Illinois Department of Children and Family Services in child protection or in casework follow-up. Thank you. Can you
Omar, do you
respond
wanna
to
take
that, please?
First, or Martin? Omar?
I'll let the junior senator.
There you go.
Well, Lourdes, I mean, we've spoken about this in the past, and what you didn't announce was also with your connection with the Burgos consent decree of making, which is celebrated its 30th year, and Mr. Del Valle over there has a lot of history based on that decree. But look, I started my career as a case manager, bilingual case manager for the community care program that Martha had just mentioned, and if it wasn't for being bilingual, I wouldn't have been able to get that employment. I can say individually as myself, I think we're trying to work together as a caucus to have certain issues that we take up as a caucus position. I think that is one of a great idea of that if we can work collaboratively together to make sure that those dollars are being put towards something like that, I think that would be great because that touches upon a lot of the issues that we talked about up here with ensuring employment and that they're getting paid, but also making sure that people, that if they have graduate loans and things like that, that they're able to at least consider working for the Illinois, for government, where right now it's not the most secure type of employment as it was years before.
Well, thank you. I'm willing
Martin?
to work with you. Just let me know. Thank you
There
so
you go.
much.
Martin, do you want to add anything?
It's fine.
Okay, let's move to the right.
Morning, Luis Narvaez. My question is pretty simple. I believe that we are going to get the second Amazon headquarters in the region, but I wonder how many of those jobs will go to Latinos and immigrants. What can the average citizen do to, once that gets approved and established here, make sure that the jobs go to our community?
Yeah, and as important as that, the tax credits, how are they going to impact the services we give to our communities?
Yeah, I'm glad that you think that Illinois is going to go ahead and get Amazon. I will call them up right now and just say, forget the suspense, let's just announce it right now. But I would say that there is probably, our approach, I hear from businesses more than anything else when it comes to wanting to hire, that they can't find people with the right skill sets. Or, you know what, there is a population that could, but they just can't get to my workplace within an hour, or I'm in the city and the suburban won't come in, or vice versa. So I would say that I am confident that if there's anywhere near 50,000 jobs, they are going to want to hire everybody that they can that's qualified, and I believe that I'd be very, very surprised if diversity wasn't a priority for them. So the Chamber has always said, hey, setting a percentage for each community is not something that we think is realistic or really works for them, but I'm confident that they are going to be reaching out everywhere looking for the kind of qualified employees that they want to go ahead and bring in. Right now, they're already employing more than 10,000 people in Illinois as it is. So great opportunity for us. It will need some incentives. I'll just be honest, that's the case, because we are competing. We are competing for that investment, and other states are offering up some very generous things. So I think that we need to do our analysis to make sure that it's a net benefit for the state. I think that you can make that case pretty easily. I don't think we've given away the store in our bid. So I think that there will be more economic activity, more tax revenue as a result of an Amazon coming here than not coming here.
Miguel has something to say about
Yeah, I just want to quickly share this with you. Over the past 5 years, Illinois universities have gone from trailing the national average in STEM degree production to becoming a national leader. The substantial growth of STEM degree production in Illinois has been unprecedented and driven dramatically, particularly by the health and computer science disciplines. But in 2016, 49% of all computer science degrees were awarded here in Illinois to non-residents, up from 37% in 2012. So there are a lot of folks coming from all over the world here to Illinois for training, and I love that because Illinois is training them and they're going back to their countries and doing well and contributing, or they're staying here. Better yet, they're staying here and taking on those jobs that an Amazon will be creating and others. But Latinos are not participating in this unprecedented growth. In 2016, a mere 685 Latino students enrolled in computer and information sciences and support programs in bachelor's and master's degrees were enrolled in public universities in Illinois. Total public universities, 685. Here at Northeastern, last year, enrollment of Latinos in this field, computer and information sciences and support at Northeastern, 112 Latinos. Last year, the number of degrees granted by this university in those areas to Latinos, 15. 15. And this is an Hispanic serving institution. And they're doing well in terms of enrollment. So those numbers indicate the type of work that needs to be done. But never accept an excuse from Amazon or anyone else that they just can't find any Latinos. They're hard to find, but they're out there.
Thank you, Miguel. I know Martin has something to add to it.
Pardon?
Well, we need you back.
Senator Miguel del Valle, Senator, I have to respond to that.
One second. I know Martin wants to finish this.
Yeah. You know, it's easy to I love gran amigo Miguel del Valle because he's a passionate, human. We've learned a lot from him. Listen, it's very easy to be critical of the legislative body or of the governmental body, whether it be the city council, whether it be the county of Cook, or whether it be the state legislature. It's very easy. It's very easy. But I will tell you, I recently did an assessment on the number of designated STEM schools by Chicago Public Schools, right, in the 4th Congressional District. I recently did to find out how many schools have been designated STEM. And I didn't find one. I will take the south lobe of the 4th Congressional District, the entire Midway corridor. We're talking La Villita, you're talking about Gage Park, you're talking about Brighton Park, you're talking about West Lawn, you're talking about Clearing, the entire southwest side of Chicago, where it is the heart of the Latino community. Not one STEM designated school. Not one. I'll tell you where they're at. and they're not in our community, we also have to dig deep within ourselves, in our homes, right? We must continue to push something as simple as it may sound in Latino families is investment in higher education. We are losing the battle in higher education. 65% of our Latino students are not finishing high school, right? And so we need to look ourselves in the mirror also, right? And those that are going to college, they're not studying, right? They're not studying STEM, right? So I've got a manufacturing center at Daly College on the southwest side of Chicago. We're just investing $75 million in upgrading that manufacturing, and the slots are empty.
Thank you, Martin. I know you want to add something. You're going to wait for me, are you? Yeah.
To respond to these two comments, I've been in technology education for 30 years. I'm a business owner, and I have not seen the trend go on the positive side in this field. And the reason why is we're not starting early enough. We talk about workforce, we talk about higher ed. We're not talking about, as you are now, high school. We need to talk about elementary school, primary school. We're not doing that. We're not bringing in robotics, we're not bringing STEM, we're not bringing mentors, coaches. We see other things happening in the preschool area and not in our communities. We need to change that thinking, the mindset that we have to isolate what happens for Latinos only in the language and culture. We've got to incorporate STEM, STEAM, robotics with students that speak Spanish, with students that bring a lot of contributions to their schools. And we can't hold them back just because they're learning English. That's got to change. I'm an immigrant, and I was able to do both. And I don't see the growth, and I'm ready to pass on the baton, but I don't see who to pass it to. So we've got to change it. We've got to look at bilingual education. We've got to make it innovative. We've got to bring both together and not wait for one for the other.
Yeah, wrong timing because CPS might be closing more schools, and I don't want to open that Pandora box. But do you want to comment anything on that?
No, I was just going to just say you're absolutely right, but it's even earlier, early childhood education.
Right, correct. I'm with you. Early childhood.
We have to be investing preschool and before that.
Yes.
We need to make sure that our children, when they get to the public schools, they're at the same point as their peers. Right now, they're not, and so the trajectory is the same. They educate them about the same rate. The problem is that when you start off already behind, you never catch up, and we're lagging. And so we need to start that as early as possible.
So the action is, what are we going to do? And I'm launching a nonprofit initiative with my friend, mentor, Dr. Ron Perlman, for Digital Leaders Now to bring digital leadership from early childhood all the way through P20. So let's do it. Let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, let's move to the left. The gentleman's been waiting for long, so.
Hi, my name is Bill Morton. I'm president of the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. We celebrate our diversity. We're one of the most diverse communities in the city. This question is specifically for the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, Illinois Commerce Commission. You mentioned that the chambers of commerce aren't together enough to bring about the economy. How can we better bring the chambers together to stimulate our local economy so that we have small businesses that create more jobs for our unemployed? And the second part of that question is what can we do, what are we doing to keep utilities affordable for our very hardworking working poor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, go ahead, just the first one. I think maybe, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I talk about people not getting together and talking, I was actually thinking more of the community colleges and other groups that have come together in their communities specifically for workforce development. So that's what I was referring to. But there are lots of ways for chambers to come together. Institutions that I'm happy to get introduced and what have you. So I think it was just my comment maybe misconstrued a bit, but there are lots of ways for chambers to come together existing. Why don't I'll grab your card afterwards and we'll get you plugged in. There's a lot of good, not only in workforce, but a lot of different areas. And in terms of, Miguel, do you want to take on the energy issue?
Affordable utilities. I am on the Illinois Commerce Commission.
Yes.
By the way, I'm completing my 5-year term January 15th, and I'll be done at the Illinois Commerce Commission. But as long as I'm there until January 15th, I will continue to advocate for reasonable rates. I do cast votes that are important, and I can't discuss because I'm a regulator. I can't discuss the open dockets that are before us. But we've been fortunate the last several years, and this is not just in Illinois, but across the country, that with natural gas supplies being cheap, that's led to cheaper electricity. It's led to a number of things. We've been able to keep the supply costs of the electric bills and the gas bills lower, but the distribution costs have continued to increase. Why are the distribution costs, which in many cases is more than the supply costs on your bill? It's because we are doing all this modernization and all this infrastructure. I looked at my People's Gas bill this morning, and there's a line in there for qualified infrastructure plan surcharge. The General Assembly approved that. You see all that construction that's going on, new gas lines and new meters being moved from inside the house to outside. You know, that was all approved by the General Assembly. Well, my bill this morning, I'm paying $8.78 a month for that surcharge, just that surcharge. It's a small part of the bill, but there's other parts of the bill that are there. We're paying for energy efficiency, for example. I didn't have enough time to go into that. Everyone here that pays their gas bill and their electric bill is paying a small portion for energy efficiency. Well, on the gas side, if you look at energy efficiency and the money that's being spent, which is your money, you're paying for it, the utilities spend it, but you're paying for it. If you look at the Latino community on the south side, for example, there's more energy efficiency dollars being spent in other communities than there are in Latino communities. Why is that the case? And so we work to keep the bills down, but then the other matter is, how do we make sure that we are getting the full benefits of what it is that we are paying for our utility bills? And so I don't see utility bills increasing dramatically, but they will continue to increase because of the modernization that's taking place and the spending that is authorized by the General Assembly first and then by the Illinois Commerce Commission.
Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you.
Answer? Yeah, okay.
Ladies
I know
first.
it's Jamie's turn, but let's go to it.
Oh, well, you're so sweet. Thank you. Karina Ayala Bermejo.
Meet you.
He's sweet?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Karina Ayala Bermejo. I'm the new president CEO of Instituto del Progreso Latino. Previously, I served. Thank you. I served as General Counsel for Metropolitan Family Services. And Miguel del Valle, you mentioned a very important study that was commissioned by MFS in partnership with UIC. I think it's critical that nonprofits partner up to do these important studies, because who else is going to do them for us, right, if we don't pay for them? So I think that's very important. And the first question is, what type of study would allow us to have a very impactful partnership that would help you do what you need to do and help us do informed decisions? So think about that. And then number two, I used to think a lot about, you know, nothing stops a bullet like a job, but that isn't sufficient anymore, right? We have to think of nothing changes a community like a well-paid job. So at Instituto, we firmly believe in STEM and health and sciences specifically. We have a charter school focused on that, where our high school students, 750 of them, mostly Latino, are focused on health and sciences. We know that we have to very much do supportive services around them, that we have to have warm handoffs, right? We don't want to lose them. So we're opening up a college, and that'll allow for that very critical pipeline into what we know is a nursing gap, especially with bilingual. What could we do to partner in innovative education? Because we know it's not linear for many of us, where you can exit and enter, do stackable credentials, and allow for a expedited pathway for experiences. Thank you.
All right, who wants to answer first? Gentlemen, lady?
I was going to let the legislators go first.
Oh, you go first,
question
Miguel.
about studies.
It looks like
and
you have something to say about it.
I always have something to say, but you know, and Senator Sandoval and I have talked about this a number of times. You know, we need to do a Latino Illinois labor force analysis, total breakdown. I mean, we can look at different studies that are out there that universities have produced, but we need to do a comprehensive review to determine where are Latinos working, types of jobs, salaries, you know, where are they distributed geographically, and then, of course, in doing the workforce analysis, we're going to look at the overall workforce in Illinois and see where is it that the obstacles exist for Latinos to be able to advance in different arenas. That type of analysis can then be used and must be used to then deal with higher education, to deal with K through 12, to deal with different segments in the private sector. You know, we should have that kind of analysis now injected into the conversation about Amazon and about city policies to attract other tech companies and other sectors into Chicago, and the governor's efforts to attract more into the state of Illinois. In other words, the data has to be there, it has to be current, it has to be updated, which means that on an annual basis you've got to work on these things, and then that data has to be put to work in a sophisticated manner and orchestrated. And I think the Latino Caucus has not only the skills, you know, but the commitment to be able to do that, and that's why I asked Senator Sandoval as co-chair
I guess you're going to have to say something about it.
You know, I will say that it's always a challenge. I want to congratulate you on your new position. You're one of our very own. You know, it sounds trivial. Information is power. I can tell you the story when Miguel del Valle would spend his evenings with an ad hoc group of community residents, and they would put studies together so that they would end up with pieces of legislation. I saw it, I was there, I saw it. You know, the only body of Latino elected officials in the entire state of Illinois, in the history of Illinois, that's ever done an analysis of anything is the Latino Caucus Foundation a few years ago. That was the only time. Not the City Council of Chicago, not the County Cook, not the Board of Review, nobody that represents Latinos has ever invested a dime governmentally, right, to do any type of analysis. It is much needed, and I'll tell you, it is very challenging even for myself to try to convince my own colleagues to spend the resources, right, to do a statistical analysis of anything. I hope that this conference, this town hall, will motivate some of them, if not most of them, right, to spend and make the investment to do the analysis, that we continue, people like Devine and myself and some others, continue to advocate so that we can move forward with an agenda. There can be no agenda if there is no information.
There you go. Cristina, want to add anything?
No, I'm good.
No? Okay,
We're running
Jaime,
out of time,
you got to
so.
close it.
Gracias. I just wanted to, I'm a representative from the 40th District, bring up 2 points. To the young lady that asked about what are we doing about the community care program, I just wanted to tell you, last session, I was a sponsor of House Bill, oh, I forgot my glasses, but the House bill that actually raised the wages. The governor vetoed, we passed the House and we passed the Senate, but the governor vetoed it.
Yes.
So hopefully when the next governor comes, I would sponsor that bill again to raise it, because we're having a situation, even down south now, people are leaving the community care program to go work at Amazon state distribution centers, because Amazon pays $11.25 an hour, so why would they go work at the community care program? And as my other role as the chairman of the Cybersecurity, Data Analytics, and IT Committee, I've been traveling a little bit, going to Google and Facebook and other, meeting with all these other companies. And what I have noticed is that it's not as much, and trust me, we're lacking in their workforce, the Latinos. And one of the things I think the biggest problem is that in universities, I've seen programs that lower the standards of admissions for Latinos. That is not helping us. That is not helping us, because all that's doing for that Latino student, that if he can get into the university with a 21 on his ACT instead of a white at a 25, is we are setting up that Latino student to fail, because he's going to compete on the curve as that same white student at the 25 level. And I think what has to happen, instead of lowering the standards of admissions in colleges, is we have to up our standards and make sure that in high school, that instead of him taking remedial algebra, that they start taking advanced placement classes. So when they apply for college, they're at the same level. And it's a very situation, because it happened to me 20 years ago. It happened to me 20 years ago that when I went to that program, I got into college because my ACT was lower, but when I sat next to the other student from New Trier or somewhere else, what I was trying to learn, he already saw him sophomore year in high school. And I think we have to increase our level at a high school level and encourage our students at high school level. And that's what I think that's why we're going to be able to increase our population. You know, we lost my nephew to Washington, D.C. because the competition is so great. There's over 220,000 jobs just in data analytics that we can't even fill with whites, Latinos, or anyone. And if the people graduate, we will be able to find them jobs. So I just wanted to say that. All right, gracias.
Muchas gracias. We have two ladies to finish it, so I'll ask you to ask your questions or give us your comment, and then when you finish, the second lady, we're going to allow our panel to answer, and then we're going to wrap it up, okay?
Yes,
20 seconds.
Okay. My name is Trudy Leong, and I'm student trustee at Northeastern, and also I intern at the Rogers Park Chamber of Commerce. I really love this town hall because I'm a business administration major, political science minor, and this is what I really want to work on for the rest of my life. So my question is to Mr. Meich at the Illinois Chamber of Commerce. What sectors of small business in this business climate have the most potential for success, and what are the trends for Latino businesses, small businesses, for what sectors are trending for the best potential for success for Latino businesses, small businesses?
Okay, Mr. Meich, I'm going to allow the second lady to ask her question, and then if you can remember the first one, we're going to allow you to answer.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for such a robust panel discussion today. My name is Venancia Bate-Ambrush, and I am a volunteer and a new member of the Association of Latino Professionals for America, ALFA. And I just wanted to say that some innovative things that we're doing right now to really address the STEM issue at an early childhood level is partnerships like with Junior Achievement, with Girl Scouts of America. And so I would just encourage people to learn more about ALFA, to become a member of ALFA, and to encourage your youth to take advantage of extracurricular opportunities to develop their leadership and STEM opportunities through things like Girl Scouts of America and Junior Achievements. In my day job, I work for a healthcare safety net, so the comments of Mr. Sanchez are very near and dear to my heart, and I'm also a graduate and an adjunct professor here at Northeastern Illinois University.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Meich.
All right, just very quickly, I will say that in terms of businesses and being successful, because we're the chamber, we represent everybody. We don't you know, a lot of different people can do a lot of successful things in very different ways. I will tell you the one thing that I am impressed with is, frankly, just a new board member of mine, is the IT area. Again, we keep coming back to that. And hey, if you own a bus company, I love you, bus company, but we see that where the job growth and the higher wages are is in that area. And I am really impressed with a network of those IT staffers who have come that do staffing as well as the actual systems work. And there is an impressive network of those people I've just recently become aware of and gotten plugged into. So that's just, I know that's the best answer, but that's kind of top of mind, is I've been impressed by how vigorous and connected they all are. Kind of a support service. You know, even though they compete some, they all want to be successful together. So that's the one segment that jumps out at me right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maish. Martin Sandoval just left the building. Thank you, Martin. Our distinguished panel, thank you very much. And all of you, it was great. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be part of it. We'll see you soon.